NFL free agency is around the corner, and on today's episode of Chicago Bears Now, I take a look at some free agent targets as things have already been busy in the NFL leading up to Monday, and things are going to continue to be very, very fascinating for the Chicago Bears. So stick with us here as we are going to go over some players. Here are a couple dates to note. The tampering period starts Monday at 12 Eastern time. For teams. That's really when deals start getting agreed to. They can't be inked until the new league year occurs. It's kind of like with all these trades that have happened. Technically, those can't be official until then, 4 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday. But all the deals start getting agreed to on Monday, so we will be live covering all of that. Okay, let's start going through some players here. We'll start with Drew Dalman, the center, obviously a prominent name that we've discussed quite a bit. Since trading for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, I think there's a bit of a split among the fan base. Do you want to pay top dollar? I would do PFF's projected contract. 4 for 56, 14 a year, about half the contract guaranteed. I would do that. I also don't think that's what he's going to get. I think he's going to get more. And I think that price has steadily gone up. A guy like Mitch Morse retires. Well, that's another team that needs a center. Once Trey Smith came off the market, once the Bears traded for Joe Thuney, like these interior linemen, there's less and less available. And I think that teams are a little desperate because it's not a great center free agency group. It's not a great center draft. And Drew Dalman is hitting the market at the right time because he's a good, even though he's not a great player, he's a good player in his prime. That is the best combination of young and pretty good. Like he's a fringe top 10 center in the NFL. He's really good in wide zone schemes. It feels like the Bears are shifting a little more to a gap scheme, so I don't know if that's a great fit for Dalman as an undersized center, but beggars can't be choosers at the same time. I certainly understand that. It's a supply and demand issue, but I'd be, as that price goes up, it makes me a little more nervous. Again, if the PFF deal's on the table, I would do it. You start getting $16, $17, $18 million per year, Creed Humphrey money, I get a little bit more nervous. How much are you willing to pay Drew Dalman per year? Just throw a number, 15, 12, 20. What are you willing to pay Drew Dalman on an annual basis? I think you get beyond 16. I get really nervous. I think that's kind of high end for me. So you guys let me know, what are you willing to pay for Drew Dalman? Okay, Khalil Mack is our next Bears free agent target. Obviously spent a lot of time with the Bears. I'm intrigued by PFF's contract projection. 2 years, $45 million, basically all of it guaranteed. It's $22.5 million per year. That feels on the high end. Like that feels the opposite of the Dalman projection. Like I feel like 14 a year at this point, what we've heard about Dalman feels on the low end. I think 22, 23, that's probably in the high end. It could get there for Mack. It's not a strong edge group. Again, supply demand. He's still a very good player. I will say this. I would be okay with it because unlike Dalman, you're talking about a 1 or 2 year deal, right? If you want to give Khalil Mack north of $20 million per year on a 1 or 2 year deal, it's not crippling you long term. Now, if he wanted 3 or 4 years at 34 years old, I'm passing on that. 1 2 year deal, if you got to overpay, hey, that's free agency. You need a pass rusher. Khalil Mack is still a very good player. You don't need him to be a star, but can he be a guy that helps you in the short term? Maybe you draft an edge on day 2 as well to develop under him. He could certainly help that guy out, help an Austin Booker out. I think there's a lot of value. I think what he would bring to the defense is a lot of what Joe Thuney would bring to the offense. I think Thuney is a better player for what he brings on the field than Mack does at this point. But what both would provide is incredible leadership and just guidance for younger players on this team. So if you can get that on a 1 or 2 year deal, I'm definitely very open to it. And it's just a major position of need, let's be honest. Joey Bosa is another guy the Bears could look at in free agency. He was released by the Chargers. Probably a 1 to 2 year deal for him as well. PFF doesn't have a projection for him because he just got released. But he's been declining in play. He's had some injury issues in recent seasons. Now, last year he played in 14 games, although he did leave multiple other games, kind of like Tevin Jenkins. It's a little misleading in terms of how many games he actually played. But, 5 sacks, couple forced fumbles. He can still be disruptive. I think that's what you're hoping for if you bring him in. Can you give you 5 to 7 sacks? 7's probably on the high end. Play 12 to 15 games. That's probably what you're hoping for. I would rather have Khalil Mack than Joey Bosa. if I'm picking between the two Chargers. Now, there's a report out there that the door is not completely shut on a Bosa return to L.A. That could be dependent on if they're able to get Mack back or not. So they could pivot back to Bosa on a cheaper deal. So it'll be interesting to see how the Chargers play through. It kind of feels like they want one of those guys back. They kind of know / understand they're not going to get both back, but they would like one back. Feels like they'd rather have Mack, but if he gets priced out, I think Mack and his reps will probably want to hit free agency, see what his market is. Then maybe the Chargers pivot back to Bosa, and maybe the Bears are the team that poached Khalil Mack from the Chargers. Wouldn't mind Bosa, but whereas Khalil Mack's projected to potentially get north of $20 million, I'm cutting that in half for Bosa. I'm $10 million is probably about as high as I'm going for him, at least with the base salary. If they want to add incentives, that's cool. But the injuries, the decline in play, it's evident. Bears Now will be live pretty much all of next week. For sure, the first 3 days of free agency, we'll see kind of where things sit after that. But it's going to be a blast. Myself, producer Colin, we're going to be rocking. We're going to be rolling. It's going to be a lot of fun breaking down not just every Bears move, but every rumor out there, every other signing across the NFL. If you're just an NFL fan, this is going to be a fun channel for you guys to hang out with. We'll bring you guys the informative analysis, our takes on everything happening, plus everything else Bears and free agency related. Should be a lot of fun. Trades will happen as well. We'll have that all covered. Our next free agent target is Javon Hargrave. Now, he's getting a post-June 1st designation, so he doesn't technically free up until the start of the league year on Wednesday. I'm not sure, admittedly, if he's allowed to negotiate with other teams in the meantime. That could be if the Niners let him or not. There's technicalities with those things sometimes. But I do know this. He was interested, the Bears were interested in him, and I think vice versa, in 2023. But that price just kept going up. I mean, the Niners ended up giving him 4 for $85. I think the Bears were in for like 18 a year. And he got priced out because he had that massive year with Philadelphia where he had 11 sacks back in 2022. And look, he tore his triceps last year. That's kind of a fluky injury. That's not like a soft tissue or a torn ACL, these injuries that constantly happen in the NFL. So if you look at the course of his career, he actually is not really an injury-prone player. Now, he is going to be 32, so as you get older, especially as a trenches guy, you're more susceptible. But he's never missed more than one game in a season in his career before last year, which again was not like a knee or an ankle or an Achilles, these injuries that pop up. Torn triceps, kind of fluky. So I think he can come in, be a good disruptive interior pass rusher. He does not play the run. So he'd be a heavy rotation guy, but I think for the right price, I'd be pretty interested. Similar situation with Jonathan Allen. Now, we are filming this, full disclosure, on Thursday afternoon. So if any of these guys get signed or cut or whatever, all this stuff, there's a chance some of this stuff is slightly dated. But as of now, Allen technically is still with the Commanders. But all the reporting suggests if they don't find a trade for him, they're going to cut him. And the latest reporting is there's not much trade interest. So there's a very good chance he'll get cut. I do not want to trade for Jonathan Allen unless it's like, the Christian Kirk trade where it's like future seventh, whatever the case may be. But if he frees up, I'm very interested because kind of like Hargrave, good interior pass rusher. Neither really defends the run that well. I mean, they're just not good run stoppers at this stage in their career. Hargrave never really has been. Allen the last couple years has slipped. Maybe he'd bounce back in a Dennis Allen scheme. I'm not sure. But they can get after the quarterback. They can dent the pocket. And if those guys, if you get one of them to come in there, can do that for, $8, $9, $10 million on a one-year deal, I think that's worthwhile because you need more disruption from your defensive line for opposing quarterbacks. Pick a defensive lineman. We just talked about 4 of them. Who would you want the most? Type KM for Khalil Mack, JB for Joey Bosa, JH for Javon Hargrave, or JA for Jonathan Allen. I think edge is a bigger need, but Hargrave and Allen could be a little cheaper there in the interior. Let us know who you guys want. Get yourself an FGB t-shirt at chatsports.com/FGB. If you effing hate the Packers, get yourself an FGB shirt. Link is in the comments and in the description of this video. Okay, we'll kind of rapid fire through some other positions here. Other center options beyond Drew Dalman. Ryan Kelly, I really like him as a 1 or 2 year option. 32 years old, 6'4", 307. He's not a bruiser, but he's a little bit bigger than Drew Dalman. He could be an interesting stopgap option. Maybe the Bears draft somebody as well. Josh Myers, similar. He's a little younger, but I view him as a 1 to 2 year guy. 6'5", 310, so he's a little bigger as well. You could bring back Coleman Shelton. Him and Caleb Williams, he started all 17 games last year, so there'd be some familiarity, obviously. Austin Corbett is a name out there. Bradley Bozeman had a bad year with the Chargers, but in more of a gap scheme, he's more of a bruising center. Maybe he would be like a really cheap lower-end option. I think you'd almost certainly would have to draft someone in that scenario, but he could be someone to consider as well. Other defensive linemen, a few more edges. Josh Sweat. I didn't include him with the primary guy. I just think he's going to cost so much money. I think some team is going to throw $20+ million for him on at least a 3-year deal. I'm not that interested in doing that. If the price came down, I would be, but if he gets what people are saying, I'm probably out. DeMarcus Lawrence, 1 or 2 year deal, $10 to $12 million. I would love that move. He's a leader, stops the run really well, good pass rusher. Was banged up last year, but in 2023, he was one of PFF's highest graded edge rushers. Malcolm Koonce, don't know if he's a scheme fit, but 2 years ago with the Raiders had a breakout season before missing all of last year with an injury. His market will be interesting. Deo Odengbo from the Colts. He's getting a lot of buzz right now. I saw Brad Biggs mention his name. He's long and athletic, could fit the bill of what Dennis Allen is looking for. He was, I think, top 10 in pressures quietly last year for the Colts among edge rushers. I'd have to double-check that. But he's a name to monitor. Azeez Ojulari, I think him and Malcolm Koonce are more 3-4 guys, but he could be a cheaper option. Dante Fowler had a good season with Washington. Was that a fluke? He had 10 or 11 sacks. He might go back to the Commanders, not sure. Milton Williams, kind of like Josh Sweat. In Williams' case, don't love the scheme fit. Also, I feel like this is a classic overpay situation, which free agency always is, but I think those two guys in general are going to get massively overpaid. B.J. Hill, Tershawn Wharton, Poona Ford. Poona is like an Andrew Billings, just rotate those two guys at nose. That seems pretty fun. Wharton and Hill could be rotation 3-tech guys, so keep an eye on them. Wide receivers, obviously Keenan Allen's not a lot of chatter around him right now. Be curious to see what his market ends up being. Tyler Lockett got released by the Seahawks. He can sign right away, so we'll see if he waits until free agency starts. I thought Demarcus Robinson had a good year with the Rams. He could be kind of a cheaper option, runs good routes. Decent blocker. Marquise Brown, not going to block much, but a good speedster. Tim Patrick, opposite, really good blocker. Not going to hit a lot of home runs as a receiving threat, but if you want a guy that's just going to do the dirty work, he'll do that. Could you buy low on a guy like Elijah Moore, a day 2 pick a few years ago? Josh Palmer's always been a solid wide receiver through with the Chargers. He'd be interesting. What does Brandon Cooks have left? Noah Brown, really good blocker. De'Ami Brown had a really good playoff run with Washington, so a couple of Commanders in there as well. Safeties. We've talked about safety some. I think hedging a little bit behind Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker could be a good idea, whether it's in the draft or free agency. 5 names, Jeremy Chin, Julian Blattman. Those 2 guys will probably want to be surefire starters, so if you brought them in, maybe you've convinced or you're pivoting off one of your other guys, either Brisker or Byard. I think Xavier Woods, Quandre Diggs at this point, like, you could maybe convince them to be like safety 3 types that are ready to go, obviously. And then DeMar Hamlin, I don't think he's a starter, but played pretty well last year as a starter for the Bills. I think he'd be a high-end 3rd safety, and if you needed him to play in a pinch, he could certainly do that for you. Depth offensive lineman free agents. Morgan Moses has played primarily right tackle, but has gotten some left tackle snaps over the year. He got a clean bill of health the other day, that was reported. So could he be that competition at left tackle for Braxton Jones that Ryan Poles has mentioned? Jed Wills Jr., former first-round pick, he could fit that bill as well. I still like the idea of bringing back Matt Pryor as a high-level backup, can play guard, can play tackle. Dalton Reisner, he's been linked to the Bears before. I think in this Ben Johnson offense where they're going heavier on their interior guys, Reisner would fit that bill as a high-level backup. If he finds a starting job, he would do that. But if not, maybe the Bears make sense. Evan Brown, a name we haven't talked about a ton, has center guard flexibility, bigger guy. Maybe he could fit that stopgap center option as well. He played some center in Seattle, played guard last year with the Cardinals. Actually played pretty well as a guard, but if they brought him in, I wonder if they'd look at him at center. We'd have to wait and see. So there you go. Bunch of free agents. We zeroed in on 5, then obviously rapid fire on some other guys at some notable positions as well. Who will be the first free agent the Bears sign starting on Monday? Obviously, they signed Durham Smythe and all that stuff, but who is going to be the guy once the tampering period opens on Monday that they sign. Let us know who you guys think that is. Appreciate everybody tuning in. It's going to be a hectic week coming up, so subscribe, get your sleep. We'll have you guys covered. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Bear down.